All right, we're live here at the station of decapitation with Thatcher Head. I'm Nasty Neal, and we just watched In the Dark, the world premiere, and now we're joined by a bunch of very cool people here who were involved in the movie. We have David Black,
Hey,
Vixey Teh. I hope I pronounced the name. Hello, Michael Epstein, who bathed for us.
I did.
Michael Fausti.
Hello. I did bathe as well, but earlier.
Sam Mason Bell.
Hello.
Along with Chris Mills.
Hello.
And Patch also in the background there.
Yeah.
And Dane Keil, I'm very happy to see he's wearing the shirt.
Yes, it's pronounced Kyle.
Kyle, I'm sorry. I should ask all these things beforehand, but I'm very unprofessional.
I know it's a very common thing, so don't worry.
All right, fair enough. So it was very cool to watch a movie. Was it the first time for most of you seeing the final film?
yes.
I haven't
I
seen
assume
that
not
footage.
for Sam because he probably edited it.
Well, yeah, that was the first time. That was the second time. Second time I'd watched it all the way through, and I still see bits that I need to like tighten before it goes out distribution.
Well, I was going to ask that. Is this the final version?
After watching it tonight, no. It needs clarity of who the people are. I realized by just throwing you into them, needed clearly the names at the bottom. And there was a couple of random little edits bits, which I was like, all right, okay, I'll fix that up.
Yeah.
But
I was actually going to mention that to you off air, but since you brought up, I do think my critique would be to add names in for the.
Yeah. I just kind of missed it, but this was a good opportunity just to get people to see what the documentary is about, and I can clean that up nice and easily for when it's out wider. So,
Also a small mistake in the credits.
that's guaranteed. Sorry about that. I'll correct
in
that.
the first part, one fella's mentioned twice and Vixey isn't mentioned. And at the very end, Vixey's name's misspelt.
Well, I am a terrible person when it comes to grammar, and people always complain to me about spelling. Fortunately, we have these sweetings to clean up, so I'll get that all cleaned up. So
it's nice to have this Q&A so we can all attack Sam here.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to attack Sam.
No.
It's
Anybody
just you're
else
talking
spelling?
about fear. And I'm more scared of Vixey than Sam. She's going to get me.
So before we went live, Dane mentioned you guys filmed this like 2 years ago. So how long has it been in the making?
A long time. Yeah, I originally contacted people, I think it was in the beginning of 2019. But because everyone was recording their own footage, it took a long time for me to go through all of it and edit and obviously do the other projects in between. I was still trying to work out the correct artistic tone. That's when I got India Kim involved to do the animation and to stylize it a bit more like 1920s kind of black and white silent movie stuff. And after that, I felt more comfortable that it was closer to it. Plus, we were having some people who weren't getting videos until later on. It was just a long, long process. And I'd only done one other documentary like this, and that took a long time too. So that's what I've gathered from this, is that talkie documentaries can take a long time because you get so much good material. And you've got to try and decide which stories are fitting to these points. Is this way too dark and depressing, or is this captivating? So yeah, there was a lot to get through and just try and find the stronger stuff. I didn't want it to run for 3 hours long. The first cut was 3.5 hours long. And I was just we got to get rid of some of this stuff. There's just too much.
It was interesting. You said you had the idea and started filming in 2019, because I think a lot of people now, if they see a documentary and everyone's filmed, by themselves, everyone assumes it was like a COVID project. Like you started to film it during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's true. It is kind of weird that there was so many of that self-filming afterwards. But I get it. It's so much easier way to get a community together and create something. So yeah, it's kind of cool that people do that more often now.
Yeah. So, Michael, how did you get approached to do this, and what did you think of the finished film?
Which Michael are we talking about?
Oh, that's a very good question. We'll go with Fausti here. He's the middle square, at least on mine.
Sam reached out to me, I guess, probably early 2019. And the dodgy suit that you're seeing me wearing in sort of my segments was actually, we were doing pickup shots for Exit. So we actually recorded our sort of our bits sort of, while we were sort of, doing our sort of pickup shots for Exit. But yeah, sort of, I sort of knew Sam from Horror on Sea and obviously sort of Trash Arts. But yeah, we sort of conversed via social media, and Sam sent some sort of questions over, and I was more than happy to kind of, bang on about, disturbing events from childhood and stuff like that, and film it.
Yeah. And what did you think of the finished product?
Yeah,
I know it's not. There's stuff he's going to touch up. We know.
Yeah, I like the animation. I think that really adds. Sam was earlier talking about sort of artistic tone. I think it sort of strikes the right kind of artistic tone, and adds a real sort of creepiness, and actually works as quite a nice sort of wraparound to sort of tie all the segments together, because it's a tricky job tying together all these sort of different segments and tones and voices together. But no, he's done a great job.
Yeah. And Michael, number 2, Epstein. How did you get involved?
Oh, the same basic idea. Sam had reached out, and I think it was probably like summer of 2019 that we shot it. And it was a lot of fun to get a chance to kind of reflect on some of these elements of like why we make horror movies, because we're always kind of caught up in like, why are we doing anything that we're doing in the world, in our lives, especially this last year. And so it was a really nice it was a nice piece to have the opportunity to kind of reflect on some of the purpose and meaning in the creative things that we do. So that was great.
Yeah.
I enjoyed seeing it.
I'm going to go with everybody, but along those lines, I like that it wasn't just what movies you were afraid of. You also went into, personal fears.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was important. It wasn't like, the thing is, because I was producing this with Tony, and Tony had done a lot of documentaries of a similar kind of thing, of looking at the film specifically. And as filmmakers, we do take in inspirations from so many different areas. So it was important to just look at almost, like on that psychological defining of what is fear. Everyone has their own definition. And that was really fascinating to, see people's different responses. And then, tell some scary stories from their actual life,
Mm-hmm. That's a good point about personal definition of fear, because I know one of the filmmakers mentioned being repulsed, and I don't necessarily know if for me personally, if that means the same thing as being afraid of something.
Yeah, I suppose it's different for each person. It's like those, it's like if you feared, I don't know, sugar, and it repulsed you to the point, or like the My Horror Story thing we did ages ago with Simon, fearing food itself, so he eats shit.
Right.
That kind of idea.
Yeah, that was not a documentary, by the way, so
No.
people don't think oddly of Simon. Yeah.
I'm gonna make a horror movie now called Sugar.
By the way, excellent shirt, as we mentioned. And Dane, how did you get involved?
Well, I know Sam through Tony. I've done a few projects with Tony involved in the past, and Sam again submitted footage with the questions, etc. It was kind of fun to watch this back, because I was like, geez, I was like 20 to 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And I had facial hair, which I don't anymore. And, all these different life changes,
it wasn't 20 pounds of facial hair.
No, I wish. And that'd be a different movie. But no, it was a fun one. I did notice you used probably the best pieces from what I sent over, which was good. Because I could honestly, it was so long ago, I can't remember what all I said, but I think you used the best pieces. But no, I've done some other projects with Tony and Sam in the past, and I'm always a fan of those, and always glad to be involved.
Yeah. And the sugar line you mentioned, I know you're joking, but was that part of the weight loss, like getting rid of sugar?
Yes, actually, which is, I just finished off Pepsi Zero instead of regular. That plus just not eating as much, trying to be a healthier person, I suppose. Not that I was unhealthy, but just little bits here and there. But just so much has changed since then. I filmed that in my old apartment, and I had my now ex-fiance in the room there, not with me anymore, just a lot of life changes, but overall for the better. And it does feel better to be like 20 to 30 pounds lighter. Yeah.
It's also an interesting, because you brought up a lot of personal things. So when you're watching the movie, what do you think of it as a movie? But you're also just watching it, just the personal differences over the last couple of years.
Oh, I know. Yeah, so as a movie, I think I concur with some of the larger points as far as like, probably some tightening up, probably just reminding people who everyone is, that sort of thing. But yeah, it was fun to reminisce, just because I remember it's something that only I would know. Nobody watching at home would know that, but like, so fun fact, me and Esmeralda James, who we filmed our segments in the same setup, that it was in my apartment. She set up the screen, all that stuff. But we just shot separately. And so that's why we have the same background, because we shot it in the same place. But no, it was just interesting, because I was in a much different mental place then than I am now. And I think that if I were to go back and do it again, I would, probably either do things differently, or I would, have a different frame of mind, I guess.
It's interesting. Could have different answers for what fears you today, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a few different ones, but I think the answers I gave, they still hold up, especially when it comes to like
Your
what I
childhood.
want to, what childhood, and also what I want to bring to future work, because I do want to. I was reminded of that. I was like, gee, I need to get back to, the need to make something that does disturb people on a deeper level than just the visceral, which is what I was hoping to do. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and it made it difficult to do a lot of the projects I wanted to do. But that's what the future's for.
Mm-hmm. Now, Vixey, how did you get involved?
Well, I was just following David.
Fair enough.
We were filming our short film. I believe it was transgression regression, which is why I was still wearing the lab coat. And yeah, David invited me on board to participate, and I leapt on the onto it because, I love showbiz, and I do love I really do love documentaries. I've been studying a fair bit of that at university at the moment, and I've been working with one of my lecturers who actually did one of the shark documentaries that's currently on Disney Plus.
Oh, really?
So yeah, she was one of the researchers on that project. And I love sharks. I think sharks are wonderful creatures. They're just beautiful and amazing. And of course, we love the movies like Jaws and things like that. So yeah.
What is it about documentaries that appeal to you?
I think it's that beautiful sort of realism. Like, it really is like something that's like tangible and something that you experience in real life, and that it's a real solid knowledge. It's information that's very directly applicable to your life.
And it's Vixey, you brought up David. David, how did you get involved?
Well, this was all pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown. And, well, Sam had invited me in and sent me the questions. I've done quite a lot. Sam is just like this machine. He brings out a lot of documentaries, a lot of anthologies, and I've done quite a few for him. I've done quite a few for Tony. And because I was just working film after film after film after film, I was finding it hard to concentrate. I was very burnt out. And I'd been hit in a short time by 5 documentary filmmakers, all doing documentaries on horror with multiple guests. There was even a big argument on my Facebook page because I'd put up that I was doing a documentary, and another guy puts up, I'm doing a documentary, I've got the same idea. Fortunately, that was all solved, and the 2 guys actually interviewed each other for their documentaries.
Interesting.
But I was
stuck. Make a documentary about documentaries.
Well, I needed Vixey because she's very smart and she can keep her head together. And I think I might have had her in as Soundy, but I know she was to do 2 documentaries. Do you remember we did 2 that day?
Yeah.
The first one was we went back over all of the spots close by where we'd done film, where I'd done short films, and I was Sherlock Holmes and you were Dr. Potson. You were like in your own little world. That one never made the cut. So I don't even think that fella's film came out. But this one made the cut. We came out. Of the other three, one still hasn't come out. And I when you got 5 lots of different questions and you got the same filmmaker, wasn't Gerardo's. This wasn't that body dysmorphia one you mentioned. This was a week later or 2 weeks later. But I had a guy called David come out and film, and he filmed 5 of them. All of them were at different locations. It was spectacular. This was actually the dullest location of the lot. Spectacular, always dressed differently, etc. And every time somebody asked me a question, I seemed like an absolute moron because I'd have one mixed up with the other. I couldn't remember this one's name or that one's name. I had made a folder where I've got the footage of 3 of them and I can't find the other 2. And I just thought, if I don't get Vixey on board, she's the only one is actually tolerant of me when I get aphasia. Have you ever noticed that? Everyone else attacks me. They think, oh, he must be an incompetent filmmaker. He must be this, he must be that. But what happens is everybody's hanging off me in the films for so much that I'm coming to the aid of so many people while producing, directing, and making props and also acting, that when we're on this treadmill, that this film's going out for that anthology and that film's going out for that, and I refuse to let anyone down, I get to a point that I can't remember anything. And Vixey is a brain. In that one, you had 3 degrees. You're on your way to your PhD now, aren't you?
Oh, yes, I'm studying my master's at the moment. Yes.
I shouldn't mention it because they're all going to poach you now. But yeah, I couldn't have actually done that one without
nothing
Vixey.
called loyal to me.
Yeah, you belong to me forever. I own your soul. So I had to bring Vixey in to keep my head on straight because it was just too much, too fast, and I was getting close to burnout. And I thought, well, hang on, there's got to be something in it for Vixey. She's a filmmaker in her own right. Show him your trophy. I know you carry it with you everywhere.
Yes, I do. It's my good friend.
Good weapon too, yeah.
Yeah. So Vixey is a filmmaker in her own right. And so I fished it out to her. And I knew that if I just blanked out on the screen or whatever, or if I let anybody down, she could take over. And then they could just cut me out and put Vixey in. And nobody would be angry that I let anybody down with not getting the footage in.
Excellent.
None of that made sense, did it?
I think it made perfect sense.
Well, I mean, from a filmmaker's point of view, that made plenty of sense, and that is why we have editors. So thank you. Was it Michael that was editing there?
Which Michael, by the way?
Stuart.
How about Chris? We don't want to forget Chris there.
Don't
next to
forget
Patch. Yeah. How did Chris get involved? Or were you just in the room with Sam and he's just like, you're in here?
So Sam and I have worked on a few different projects together, and yeah, it's kind of when things come together last minute, you know, it's a mixture of, you know, who's available and who do you want around. So because we've worked on all that stuff together, yeah, he called me in.
Yeah, I thought it'd be kind of fun for Chris to do a couple of like random characters dressing up as Dracula, and it was just like, it was all shot in this kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
We just put a backdrop where the table is, and just, yeah, we had the makeup artist over there, Katie Johnson, and we just jump in between him and Bella. Unfortunately, Chris and Bella have worked with each other loads, so it was it was a pretty chill evening.
Yeah, pretty comfy shoot.
Yeah. When did you decide to do like the reenactments, you know, and not just have the talking heads, I guess?
I think I always wanted to do it. I didn't want to like do it like that documentary Haunted on Netflix. I didn't want it to be dramatic reconstructions because I don't have the budget to be able to justify that. And I didn't want it to have that kind of that cheesy element of being fed rather than the story being told. I wanted to find what they said and find those artistic ways to tell it. So if it was zombies or if it was the body horror, it was an opportunity just to show those moments that you would have seen in other kind of films. So I always wanted to do it from the beginning, but it was one of the last stages I did. I wanted to edit the whole entire thing, so I definitely knew. And with India, we kind of went through the list and went, okay, what should be animation? What should be filmed? And what are we just going to find some random stock footage for? So it was a nice mix of just trying to keep it interesting enough, but not distract away from the people talking.
Yeah.
And to not do certain imagery on certain stories where the story is very serious and people have been injured, and you're like, well, I can't, it feels kind of false for me to try and recreate that moment. It feels inappropriate. And some stories I just went, nah, I won't try.
Since the pandemic came up a couple times, we'll start with Michael Fausti. Has that changed how you look at making movies and how you do a horror movie? I don't mean like you want to make a movie about the pandemic, but has it just changed how you're going to make movies in the future?
I guess it's kind of a consideration, because I think realistically, we've all kind of changed how we do everything. And I think that is going to kind of feed into sort of filmmaking, everything from your sort of pre-production to, being on set. I don't know, I think it's one of those kind of sort of weird things that really, all the sort of things that people sort of talk about being afraid of, I think what people are really afraid of is sort of something that is going to sort of take over their bodies and end their lives, which became a reality for a hell of a lot of people in the last 2 years. And we were just, Lou Nosbod and I were talking about this morning. 2 years ago, none of this was kind of part of our everyday life, but now you're kind of thinking about certain precautions that you take. And I think, it took us a while to get into these habits, and I think it's going to take us a while to get out of it. But I think it's really reminded us of a really basic sort of human fear. And I don't know, I sort of, I wonder how much sort of, COVID-19 is going to play a part in terms of sort of filmmaking going forward. I mean, are we going to see a lot of analogies and movies that are really dealing with COVID-19, but are using various metaphors to explore that? I sincerely hope we're not going to see a whole bunch of kind of like outbreak disease movies, because, I think the zombie genre, was well and truly, had covered that, just before COVID-19. But I don't know, I think interesting times ahead. And I mean, what we're doing now, let's face it, nobody really got their head around Zoom and stuff like that, or at least I hadn't.
Yeah, I had actually never even heard of it until last year. Yeah.
Yeah, we were sort of forced to engage with it. Otherwise, you weren't going to talk to anybody. So, when we're sort of doing castings and stuff like that now, we are kind of thinking, well, do we need to meet?
Yeah,
people?
even just the practical level, it changes everything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, most definitely.
And I think there's also the idea of, do people want to be scared now since we have scary things in the real world, or do you want to give them an escape? So there's, I think, it asks a lot of questions.
Well, but think about it historically, insofar as this was the most transformative time for a generation of people since 9/11, which probably was the most transformative event. Like, I'm talking about a singular event, not so much like a sustained period of time. That was like it led to a sustained period of time, but it's like a single impetus. It transformed a generation in the way that 9/11 did, in the way that like Pearl Harbor did for the World War II generation, and that kind of stuff didn't stop people from making war movies or movies about terrorist attacks, that sort of thing, or even horror films. It just reframed the debate, reframed people's mindsets. Because, like, for example, the Universal monster films during World War II were horror movies, but they were also kind of spectacles, that they were spectacles in their own right. They were kind of the pre-Marvel cinematic universe, those sorts of things. And then, with 9/11 and everything, I think that does put people in a different frame of mind. It introduces more paranoia, that sort of thing. Like, I think Cabin Fever was one of the first big horror films that came out, when it was made relatively shortly after 9/11, and then came out like in early 2003. So in other words, it was a different mindset, a different kind of paranoia, because that is ultimately what that's about. And that actually is a disease movie. And then this, I think you've got isolation, you've got lockdowns, you've got, people being separated from each other, from what they care about, what they love, the people they love, that sort of thing. And I really wonder what that's going to do to not just people like me and you and everyone here who's all grown-ups, but also what that's going to do for kids, that grew up during this time, because they are going to school and then all of a sudden they have to be homeschooled ostensibly, which I was homeschooled before it was, mandatory or whatever. And so I really do wonder what that's going to do psychologically to kids that are growing up, and then the few of those who go on to make films in general, let alone horror films. There's just a lot of the possibilities are endless, but I think it is going to have a transformative effect in the way that 9/11 did, in the way that Pearl Harbor did, on filmmakers and the public in general.
Michael Epstein, do you have any comments on this?
Sure. Well, I think, kind of building on what Dane was saying, it's a lot of what he was mentioning is really kind of specific to U.S. experience or American experience. And I think, looking at the group here, it's people from around the world. And this is maybe one of the few recent events that's been experienced pretty universally amongst everybody, across the globe. So I think, there's a sort of unifying element, I guess, that's going to kind of take place in media, that it's going to take hold in media and change the way that we create and the way that we consume things going forward. I don't know, it's hard to predict exactly what that will mean. And I know, Neal, you had mentioned maybe not wanting to make things that are as dark or as serious. And I know, like, watching movies this year, there was a long period where it was like very difficult to watch anything other than, I was watching like, 7 Howling movies or things that are pretty goofy because I couldn't watch anything that was like a serious emotional investment. So, I think we're still kind of coming out of that, and there's a lot of transition from that kind of emotional, draining, traumatic experience. So,
yeah, I just know myself, I started going back to the theater a few months ago, and a lot of movies, I'd be the only person or very few. And over just lately, the movies are packed again. So I don't, it seems like people are really starting to go back out. I don't even know if people would return to the theaters, but it seems like they have.
I think people have been starved for human connection for such a long time that probably some of that is driving it. My own theater attendance actually started to go down prior to the pandemic. And it hasn't really gone up that much since then, mostly because a lot of the stuff I would like to see, I'm like, well, I could probably buy this on 4K or Blu-ray or whatever it is, and save myself a theater ticket. And, if I know I like it enough, I can just add it to the collection or whatever. But yeah, I do think for a while there, there was kind of a wonder of what is the market even ready for, what are people, what do they have on minds? As illogical and flawed as like Wonder Woman 1984 was, I think the intention behind that, especially at that time, was probably a noble one, because that's a movie about hope and about, the entire world experiencing the same thing. Just not done especially well, but like the intention seems like right place, right time, just, had some errors there. But, at any rate, to piggyback there off of what, Michael Epstein was saying there, I think, the examples I brought up before, they were very uniquely United States centric events. But this truly was a worldwide event that affected everyone the same way, which is unprecedented in world history. And it has affected the way that everyone has lived their lives. And especially like me with filmmaking, I know that a lot of the stuff I wanted to do, I had to put on hold, partially because of the pandemic, partially because of just personal crises of like job losses and moves and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of people experience. But now that more people are getting vaccinated and more things are kind of sort of starting to stabilize a little bit, I'm dusting off a few ideas. But I learned quickly that you have to be pretty self-reliant when it comes to making your own content. So a lot of the stuff that I was doing, these kinds of self-tape things for documentaries and for other projects, like I did another film called Dark Web. It was a dark web unboxing anthology film, and that was self-taped and during lockdown and everything. So it does change the way you have to do things. But then I also was transitioning into doing some YouTube centric reviews and things like that, that I could do by myself. So, it does change the way you do things, but now I'm trying to exercise those muscles again.
Yeah. I never did these Q&A kind of things before the pandemic. What were you saying, David?
Oh, if I can build on what Michael Epstein was saying, he made the perfect point that this was experienced worldwide. And you asked about how has it transformed filmmaking and what can we expect in the future? Well, the minute the pandemic, Vixey and I are from Melbourne, which is the most locked down city in the world. We were locked down for nearly all of the pandemic. And what I found was that not every city went through the same thing. So people were able to go out and about in this city for a while and that city for a while. And Vixey was the star of a film that I'm about to bring out called Toxic Alien Zombie Babes from Outer Space. I scripted it. Yeah, she's a fantastic zombie. And I scripted it, and we got the scripts out to filmmakers around the world. We're not talking Zoom footage. We're talking about filmmakers that have already got out their features, that have got names, and they got crews. And I said, do you want to do this? And they said, yes. So something would have been, I know that we had Geechee Films filming in South Carolina, a gangbanger scene, had Tony Martin filming in England, and all of these are professionally shot. This type of collaboration is what we'll see more of going forward, because 6 months before the pandemic, if I'd come up with this idea, I don't think anyone would have been open to it. That has said, go shoot your own bloody stuff, right? So, and I do want to shoot my own stuff. I wasn't being lazy. But we were able to get footage shot in, say, 4 different countries by using green screen and different techniques, put people together that would never get on set. So let's say Dane and Michael Fausti are in different places and I wanted them to be my actors. Nowadays, moving forward, you could have Dane doing a scene with Michael. You could have the background if you wanted the Statue of Liberty and nobody else is near it. You could film the Statue of Liberty. You can film different things, put them all together. It's forced us all to collaborate more, or at least open people's minds. And I believe we'll see far more collaborations. I'm not using a collaboration in the very next film we're doing because we're just like, hey, we're free. We can get out the front door again. Let's all together and make a film. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to, in the future, be working with a lot more of the people that you see here, if they'll work with me. And I want to be making films with everybody that I've admired their work for so many years. I want to work with them, not just put together a film and give it to Sam as an anthology, for his anthology, so they just cut our film in, but maybe have Sam in my film or be in Sam's film. We can work together more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
I'm open to it.
The thing with the whole, we all went through as a world a trauma, and it's something that not everybody's obviously, we all react in different ways, and some have reacted in a sort of ignorance or doubling down on protection, but we've all been with that same trauma. I think it's going to take time for that post-traumatic stress to really play out, but we, as a community, at least as filmmakers in indie horror, we've been able to come together and use that trauma like we do in horror and, make something creative. So it's cool that people now see the opportunity that, oh, great, we can go and work with USA, we can go and work with Australia, work wherever we want, because we're all trying to create something good in the end. And I think beforehand, anthologies offered that opportunity. But yeah, when we got into this whole Zoom generation kind of thing, it's really opened that up to more different kind of stories. And I think that's more important than necessarily what kind of films we should be making. We should be making the films we're still making. The world's a shitty place. There's plenty of horror to look into and find bits and bobs everywhere. So that never ends. That's what horror is so good. It's the best genre because it can truly reflect how shitty society is. Mm-hmm. And that's what's important. So it's not necessarily about, make more films about the pandemic. It's more going, how do we communicate? Let's keep that going, like Dave was saying.
Yeah.
Actually,
Um,
Vixie's got something that she can contribute. Vixie went and moved from Melbourne to Sydney just as the pandemic hit, and she was the star of my film. Can you tell us, Vixie, how you work collaboratively with Gerardo here to get your stuff shot?
Oh, well, again, yes, we were using green screen. And I'm pretty lucky that the university I'm studying with SAE is very well equipped. So I was able to borrow some of their equipment for some of the shoots. And I was just really super lucky that I just happened to always like move at the right time and just get the filming done at the right time. Like literally, like I would film a shoot, and then the next day they would announce a lockdown. So I'd be like, if I had waited like one more day, I wouldn't have been able to do the shoot. And yeah, I've just been so incredibly lucky with the timing. And I also like I made sure that I was staying at a place that was like within walking distance from the university as well. So like when they announced that the restrictions of like the distances you could travel and things like that, I was like the only person that was like able to actually go in onto the campus and like do anything physically that needed to be required. Um, and so yeah, it was just a matter of just setting myself up for success in the way that like I did actually plan like those things where it was like, okay, I need to be in a convenient location, I need to have these resources available, and just like having some sort of forethought that like, oh, if this happens, am I prepared for that? Which is a little bit strange because there's of course the extreme of like, you know, creating like an underground bunker and like and building a whole spaceship and things like this to like avoid like huge catastrophes. But like to some degree you do have to kind of plan for like the worst. Like but at the same time it's like you don't really want to go too overboard with it, so it was just it was just a partially paranoid planning and partially like just really good luck that I just happened to like have those plans in place when things did actually go wrong.
Now, you also had Gerardo still directing from Melbourne via Zoom.
Yep.
That was the
Yes.
sort of collaboration I was talking about.
Oh
So
yes. Yeah.
you're in Sydney,
The
he's in
technology
Melbourne.
these days is fantastic. I am so thankful for Wi-Fi. Like every night, I actually pray to God, thank you, God, for Wi-Fi, because we are able to like. I was able to stay in contact with Gerard and David and everyone. We were I shot the video files that were like in RAW on red cameras, so like those files were really huge, and we were still able to like upload that to each other, and then I was able to get some feedback from Gerardo as well, even on Messenger and things like that, and yeah, I just sort of just did as I was told.
But that's the real point there. You see, instead of just sending off a script and expecting somebody else just to do it and leaving them alone, any one of the people up here that directs can actually be on Zoom. They can see a screen and have the director saying, can you move here, move there? So you still got your director, still going to have your DOP in the room with professional cameras. In the past, our collaborations were just getting somebody to do animations remotely and send them to us, or create the soundtrack. Now you can have the acting. There's nothing you can't do remotely.
Yeah, and on top of that, working with the pandemic and stuff, we had restrictions about how many people could be on set and things like that. So, what ended up happening was we were doing a lot of tag teaming. So it was like the lighting crew comes in, sets up the lights, and then actually leaves the set, and then like the actors and the director, well, actually the actors would come in and like block out the scenes and stuff while the director actually watched in another room on a screen, like separately. So, and we also had like the recording, ended up setting up like the recording studio was like in the room next door, and we had to like wire sound into the room. So there was like a lot of like problem solving that happened when we were trying to work out how to like just film while still following all the protocols and all the safety measures that were set by COVID.
Sam, why weren't you in the movie?
Oh, basically, like with so many people that got in touch, I didn't want to clog it up with myself.
I thought maybe you were afraid of talking about your fears, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, no, but that's the thing. Like by making the films, you're kind of already. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to be talking. In some ways, I wish it did, because it would have been cool to be amongst everyone. But it wasn't about that. It was more about taking people's fears and then documenting it and trying to create some sort of artistic telling of the story.
Yeah,
I did think about it. But we got a decent amount of people coming through.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people. It was very cool. So many people involved. And but by the way, what would be some of the movies that do scare you or scared you when you were younger?
Oh, when I first watched Blair Witch, it was the credits. That when I was young, I was like, because I think I was about 10, and my first assumption was, oh my god, it's a true story. This is a documentary. This is real. And it wasn't even necessarily the actions in the film, which later on I appreciated more. It was just seeing those credits and thinking, oh my God, I've just watched a snuff movie. So it was more that impression. Like I loved horror from an early age. And it was more the excitement of the monsters and the nightmares itself rather than that initial fear. Like I can remember all those prominent horror films, like when you first watch The Exorcist and after that, into that second hour where it just loses its mind and you turn it off because you're 12 and you're like, I can't do this anymore. I was the kind of person that would turn something off if it was too much. Whereas later on, when I got into more films like David Cronenberg's Crash and Naked Lunch and stuff like that, and I was seeing extremities and the horror in a different sort of sense, I sort of got more into seeing the shock and the more extremities. And I didn't run out of the room. I didn't need to turn it off. So I just kind of put myself into watching the most disturbing things possible to not really get that horrified. But I love being horrified in films, but I like pushing how far a filmmaker can go to really disturb you. Disturbing to me is more important than to scare someone, or at least what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, just because, not to be a tough guy, but like I watched horror movies since I was a little kid, and so really I don't really get scared by horror movies. But if something's disturbing, as I think if you get an emotional if something gets you emotionally, even if it's a negative emotion, that's doing some type of art.
Yeah, you want something that kind of crawls into your mind and you're still thinking about it 72 hours later, and then you need to watch it again to understand why, and then you're like, oh god, why am I watching this again? But it's that's like a whole experience. And again, it is a fear experience, but it's a different kind of, it's more curiosity of how, why those mechanisms and stuff.
Yeah. Real quick about Blair Witch, because it is kind of cool now, I think, for people to dislike Blair Witch, but I think if you didn't watch it at the time, it's a weird movie to watch like now for the first time, because if you weren't there with all the buzz behind it, and then and if you watch it now for the first time after all the movies after it that, kind of copied it, it probably, I don't know what it would be like to watch it, but I assume it wouldn't be the same experience.
I actually might take the opposite opinion there.
Really?
The reason why is because Blair Witch was actually a pretty divisive movie when it came out. I mean, it got a Razzie nomination for Worst Picture, which is unbelievable to me, because I think it's the best, probably. It's like the prototypical found footage film, if you're not counting like Cannibal Holocaust. But like, point is, it was a pretty divisive movie when it came out. It did make a lot of money, but it had a pretty strong hate. Like, it had a fan base, but it had a hater following as well. I would argue that its reputation has grown with time because there have been so many that have tried to copy it, and some have either succeeded, or they've just done their own thing, and within the found footage technique. But I don't think any of them ever equaled Blair Witch, and so thus its reputation and its legacy have only grown sweeter with time, because it really was somewhat of lightning in a bottle, because they built up that movie virally for several years before it actually came out, and they really did seed the public consciousness for people to actually believe it was real. And yeah, I don't think you could really quite replicate that today, but I think it also,
because the internet's so big now, it would be hard to put things out there to make people think. It was like the internet was the perfect place at that time. It was, people knew of it, but not everyone had it. So
yeah, well,
today there'd be so much everyone telling you it's not real that
the closest that we've had to that in the modern age would be YouTube ARGs, and would be things like Marble Hornets isn't the best example because that was kind of explicitly a web series, but like things that other like creepy channels on YouTube and stuff would later investigate, or things like that, to try to figure out, is this real, is it not, that sort of thing. That's about the closest we've got, but not really something that could be released in a movie theater per se, or put on Shudder or something like that. I do think you get examples of it today, but they're just not as widespread. And again, you could never do it with that kind of hype, that kind of public profile again, because again, remember that the stars of the movie had to basically retreat from public life for a good amount of time to sell the fact that it was real, until the movie came out, and then they appeared on talk shows and things like that to promote it. But like, they had to like be in character pretty much the whole time for a good while before it came out. So yeah, I don't know if you would quite get that level of dedication again from people, although I would sure like to see people try. I would like to see people really like, actually the closest that we've seen to that, not a horror film, but like something like the Casey Affleck and Joaquin Phoenix film, I'm Still Here, where basically Joaquin Phoenix had to give off the impression that he was indeed really quitting acting and really was going to be a hip hop artist and stuff like that. But even then, people kind of suspected this is like a joke.
I truly liked that movie, but I don't think it ever really caught on to the level that they hoped for.
Yeah, but that's about the closest I can think of as far as, or someone like a Sacha Baron Cohen, who would like disappear for a few years and then he would reemerge with, another, hidden camera in character, either show or movie or something like that, but again, not quite the same thing and not really horror, but still, like I heard that and I was like, you know what, I think if anything, Blair Witch's reputation has only grown sweeter with time, because more imitators have come along and have shown just what a good job they really did. And any of the successful found footage films that have come along since then, if they have been successful, they just did their own thing. Like, I really loved VHS 2. I thought that was incredible.
As a pro wrestling fan, I don't think you can put the toothpaste back in the bottle and make people believe it's real again.
We had something like that in Australia. In Australia, we had a film come out, 1975, called Picnic at Hanging Rock.
Yeah.
And it was based on a book. We got sent to see it at school, and our teacher didn't know it was based on a book of fiction. The teacher believed it was real. People were talking about it for 5-6 years later, and the media in Australia was, what really happened to the girls at Hanging Rock? People were theorizing that aliens got them, or the devil. It was years before the majority, actually, I don't think the majority ever clicked on, but nowadays with the internet, you look it up and you find out it was a book, and this is a film of fiction. But when that was released, and for many years
so
later, people were going on about it like it was real.
the locations were real though. Like the actual Hanging Rock like place exists. So there were like and I think
They said things happened
the
on the set.
orphanage as well. Yeah, well, I mean, the parts of it that's really sold that it might be a real thing was the fact that there were a few locations and places and people that were actually real in the story.
Most people weren't aware that it was based on a book of fiction. This came
Yeah.
out, and I remember I was one of those people. I was like in grade 5, and I used to wonder what happened to the girls at Hanging Rock. As an adult, even if it was true, I couldn't give a shit. They were irritating, those girls. But there was a book. I don't know if it was a bestseller or what, and everybody believed this film that came out based on the book was based on a book that was based on a real event.
You know what's sad? You know what's sad though, in the internet age, a lot of the time we have the opposite problem where like
oh yeah, no, you don't want to believe anything that's real. Yeah.
Well, that or like you have something like Titanic, which was a real historical event, and then people watching James Cameron's Titanic were like, the Titanic was real? Yeah. Read a history book, you moron.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a few other things as well about like the representation that's coming out. Like I, as somebody who is of Asian heritage, I'm really glad that we are having more and more representation. But there are things like in Hamilton they cast African Americans in some of the in for some of the parts, and then some of the kids were told that Obama was the first Black president, and they were like, but what about Jefferson? Because they thought Jefferson was president. Because they cast for diversity in the musical. So yeah, there's a little bit of like and things like the movie that Matt Damon was in with the Great Wall was like, why is there a white person in the middle of ancient China?
Yeah, that was a bit weird, I have to admit.
There's a lot of like, well, okay, so we're doing stuff that did historically exist, but there is that beautiful blurring of like what's real and not real that's within that in itself, because of some of the modern retellings of things.
I really do wonder with Hamilton, like, on the one hand, I've heard stories of like it's gotten kids more excited about American history and that kind of stuff. On the other hand, I can I don't honestly know because I don't know any American history teachers, but like I'm really wondering, like, do they love it because it gets kids excited, or do they hate it because they suddenly think that all these people were races and ethnicities that they weren't in real life? I really don't know. I can see it going either way.
Oh, there's another controversy that's come up recently, and I'm talking just as a Jewish person. I watched a fantastic British show. Unfortunately, I've forgotten what it was called, but it was about the 1960s and Jews fighting Nazis in England. And I watched it, and I was in tears. I thought it was brilliant. And then I found out there was an argument on the internet. Why didn't they cast Jewish actors in the Jewish roles? I thought, that really wasn't necessary. These people did a fantastic job. So suddenly we've got this controversy that actors can only act as if they're themselves. Well, if I only get limited to roles for Australian Jewish males that are 57, I'm probably not going to be in very many roles at all. I just think best person for the job. I didn't like the controversy. I thought I've seen a lot of Jewish people depicted in films by non-Jewish actors who really just nailed it. And some of these films are very important to me. I mean, the one about the Bielski brothers, that one, it was just amazing. And I believe the main actor, forgot his name, Daniel, plays 007. He plays the oldest Bielski. He nailed it as a Jewish guy. So I've got no problem with that, but I can understand people not wanting someone to actually put on black makeup to be an African American, or someone getting fake eyes to be an Asian. So I think it comes down to quality. At the same time, if somebody did black up and they were just so convincing nobody knew the difference, then I'd really have to look at it again. But I'm against all of this thing nowadays where they say, no, if you're going to play that role, you have to be of that ethnicity. I think that's wrong.
I gotta disagree with you there, but then we've diverted so far away from the beer documentary that we're now just getting into awkward discussions that,
that's the next that's the next document you can work on. Yeah,
well, imagine you're not allowed to play a zombie unless you actually are a zombie.
Wow.
Michael, I believe you're muted.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just going to say that I think it's important to remember that Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter was a historically accurate film. and I think from that, maybe we can move on to talking about In the Dark, which I wanted to say something a long time ago. If I can change the subject. Somebody had mentioned, I think Neal, maybe you had talked about watching horror movies as a kid, and some other people had referenced that. And I think one of the interesting things about the documentary is that the experience of fear changes quite a lot, at least for me, has changed quite a lot from when I was young to now. And I think Sam talked about the kinds of things he likes to put in films. And I think as a kid, I was afraid of, like I was afraid of Jason or Freddy or whatever. Now I'm afraid of like existential ideas. And like, so I want to watch a movie that like, drills into my brain. I know, Neal, you watched Possession yesterday.
Yeah.
That movie is like a very disturbing, like it's a powerful movie, but it's not like there's a jump scare in it, or there's something that there's like there is sort of a monster, I guess, in it.
Yeah.
But it's just a very different experience as you become, at least for me. I mean, I don't know what everybody's, experiences are like, but as you become sort of more immersed in the world of horror and the world of kind of art, in terms of exploring fear and exploring the experience of discomfort, I think I'd like to think we become more sophisticated and approach things to look at real ways of getting deep down into the experiences and the anxieties of ourselves and of other individuals, rather than like jump scares or creating like there's a monster that's under the bed.
Yeah, well, it's like the movie The Thing. I think is so great because as a kid I just loved it for the monsters. And then when you're older, I mean, there's so much more going on in the movie, the paranoia and different things and it's also fun to watch the monsters, but it can work from all different ages. Also, along those lines, I always get annoyed when people post on social media, like so-and-so movie didn't scare them. So like they didn't like it. And I'm thinking like, I mean, if I didn't like any horror movies that didn't like actually scare me, like I would like no movies. I mean,
well, that's
I've watched it since I was 6.
That's such a subjective thing, though. I mean, what scares you is so subjective. I mean, to me, so jump scares. This is not a unique opinion, but I do think it's a true one, which is that jump scares, they're startling for sure, but so is if you were to like hold something spooky in front of someone's face, all of a sudden,
right.
Yeah, you're gonna jump, obviously, but that's and guess what? Water is wet, big insight, but to me, scary is a lot deeper than that. And that's why, like, in my segment of the film, it's why I brought up The Exorcist, because to me, there is the visceral effect of like, head spinning around, vomiting, demonic possession, all that stuff. There's that. But to me, it's a lot deeper than that. It's about, and it's a scene that was cut out of the theatrical cut, but it was restored in the later, the version you've never seen. And when it was the scene of, why this girl, it makes no sense. And it's all about, why is this happening? It's to corrupt that which is good. And it's to destroy the priests and anybody witnessing this thing, is to destroy them on a much deeper level. The belief that there is anything good in the world, that there is such a thing as goodness or beauty or anything, that's worth anything. It's just the destruction of that which is good. And to me, that's a lot more horrific. Or even like Hellraiser, totally different kind of movie. But even something like that, it's not the fact that a person is being torn apart and it's a puddle of guts that's coming back together slowly. That's not what's scary. The scariness is that it's a person's, what's the line, will tear your soul apart. It's the idea of being torn apart on an existential, deeper level. And the physical reflects that which is happening inside. And you see that even more in Hellraiser 2. That to me is a lot scarier. Or like the thing you mentioned with the paranoia, with the mistrust, with the fact that, for all we know, all of them are the thing and they don't even realize it. They might as well be. So that is a lot scarier, something that makes you think. And if it can affect you on a visceral level, all the better. That's why The Exorcist works so well, because it does affect you on a visceral level, but it's preferably it makes you think about the deeper theological questions at work.
Yeah,
I think one thing I thought, just to say about with the documentary, when it came to like people telling their dreams and hearing people's different interpretation of dreams, like Fausti's dream about the anamorphic shapes and stuff. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the documentary The Nightmare, which is all about sleep paralysis. So when he was talking about that, that's what made me think of that sort of imagery. And I couldn't get something as good as what they did. But it was interesting to see how obviously sleep paralysis plays with so many people. And I've suffered sleep paralysis and I've had some nasty stuff with it. But again, I'll use that the horror movies. And it's just interesting to see it keep coming up. And it's either a nostalgic sort of element of something from the past that kind of infects into a fear as a nightmare, or it's this deep primal thing like paralysis, which is just like for everyone, everybody gets paralysis. So yeah, it was just cool to hear those sort of dreams, and especially Ron Ford's one, and he did that awesome animation with the Batman. It was just like, you were how old when you had this horrific nightmare? But again, you take the times in, and we're talking the times of, the nuclear crisis and stuff like that. So it makes sense. So he has more of those worldwide, historically connected sort of dreams. And it was really cool that so many people got to be able to share and put them across.
Yeah.
Yes. On that topic, like the reason why Terminator is one of my favorite films, is that Terminator was set in a time when people were actually like quite afraid of technology, and so that was an expression of them that they connected with the audience on that level, that they felt this fear of technology and the fear of war and the fear of these machines being used for war, and that's what connected with so many people. And what I absolutely loved about it and what I really connected with was that the main character, Sarah Connor, she was the one that wasn't afraid. She stood up against that, and so love and that maternal instinct to protect her child like overcame that. And so like that's why I absolutely love the film, because it's like it's just got that deep, meaningful message about that, confronting that fear and overcoming, and how to overcome that fear for the protection of the next generation.
Well, a good horror film that does that, and an Australian one to boot, is the Babadook, actually. Because that's all about, a mother dealing with grief and ultimately learning to put the grief aside in service of her child who's also suffering.
Yeah.
I think what Vixey just said before is the key. The key is what you just said before, Vixey, connection. And I think that's where Sam's documentary comes in. So you don't get scared that much by a film unless you connect with something. So you're actually scared for what's going to happen to the people in the film. Otherwise, you're just going to sit back and it's just happening. It's not hitting you on an emotional level. With Sam's documentary, you've got all of these interesting people that many of them you can see here, and the viewer connects with the personal stories they're telling. So I think that's where In the Dark really starts to hit. Otherwise, nobody's going to care about a bunch of people talking about something they don't care about. But as soon as you talk about, when I was a child, I had this dream, or Vixie saying, I got bullied in school, people go, oh, you got bullied, and they connect.
I totally agree.
So, Sam, what's the plans to do with In the Dark?
Dark Side releasing, which Vince D'Amato, who was in the documentary, they're going to be releasing the film probably around spring next year. so I've got time to fix those credits and iron out any little bits. And then, yeah, really, they're going to be doing distribution for it, really, and try and get it out there. I don't think I'm going to approach too many film festivals, because the idea, again, we've all been with this project for a long time. So I'd rather just get it out there. And with Darkside, I love Darkside, so I trust them with what they do with the films. So yeah, let them run with it and see where it goes, basically.
And what any thing you're working on currently, and then we'll go around with everybody.
Yeah, and we had Terra Blatchy Forest out recently. Next week, me and Chris are going to shoot a found footage horror movie, so that should be some good fun. And yeah, just making plans for next year, always keeping things moving.
Yeah, you're prolific.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
something.
Michael Fausti, what are you working on?
I'm currently working on a segment for a horror anthology called Video Shop Tales of Terror. Kickstarter's still running if anybody wants to chuck some money in. And it all kind of works with the wraparound is kind of like this video shop where people come in and rent various tapes, and each tape represents a kind of segment of the story. I've got to be a little bit hush-hush about my segment, but
all right, fair enough.
I'm working on a segment for that at the moment, but it'll be disturbing and sleazy, I hope, in equal measure.
Okay, very good. Speaking of sleazy, let's see what Michael Epstein does.
So doing a bunch of finishing up a bunch of short film projects, but doing an anthology that is in conjunction with Steven Stahl and the Sick and Wrong Film Festival called Fat Fleshy Fingers. We mostly shot our segment. All the segments are about this sexual parasite worm that transmits from person to person. So ours is about it living in a mummy, and the guy catching it from a mummy. And then I'm working on this other project, which you probably haven't heard about, Neal, but it's called the Once and Future Smash.
Yeah,
and it's you heard of it? Yeah. So Neal is also helping produce this project, and it's a mockumentary about two guys who played the same slasher character in the 1970 film End Zone 2, and we're hopefully going to get that wrapped up in the next few months, starring Bill Whedon and Michael St. Michaels, and it's been delayed long enough by the pandemic, and now ready to get it wrapped up.
It's been very exciting the last month or so, getting a lot of things done for it.
Yeah, we've actually been able to get back to work on it and shot a bunch of stuff for it. So,
yeah. How about yourself, Dane?
Well, I'm eager to get back into some more filmmaking because, like, again, throughout the pandemic, I had a lot of bad things happen, lost a couple of jobs, moved a bunch of times, lost my fiance, all that kind of stuff. But this year I was able to bounce back with a video review series called Oztober. 31 days in October, 31 different Oz-related film and TV adaptations on my rebranded channel called Dangerous Arts, DANEJUROUS. And I am now actually in the process of making the next big month-long deep dive, which will be April in Wonderland, which will be 30 days of 30 different Alice in Wonderland adaptations. And that one actually will have a storyline connecting the reviews together, and it will be with a psychological horror edge to it, because there are a lot of horrific elements in Alice in Wonderland as a story that I will be exploring. And, I'll be able to, get my toes wet again in the world of horror filmmaking, which I haven't done in a while because of the pandemic. So definitely stay tuned for that. The channel is Dangerous Arts. The series I finished was Oztober, so please check it out.
Very cool. And David?
Oh, we've got in Toxic Alien Zombie Babes from Outer Space. We're shooting the final scenes over Christmas. That actually should have been released a couple of months ago, but whereas everybody else shot their stuff around the world, Gerardo said he didn't like my self-taping, and I've got to get a proper crew out. So I finished Toxic Alien Zombie Babes from Outer Space. That has been shot around the world and is a huge feature. We just released 2 features back to back. One's David Black's Dark Ditties from Down Under, which is a hosted anthology of maybe 10 or 11 of my shorts, and we released Badass Bunyip. So whereas I've mainly been known as a short filmmaker, I've actually got, 4 features out. I forgot. We did a documentary called In Your Shorts that was originally created for Channel 44 in Adelaide, and it went out on Channel 44, but it also got shown on 13 other community TV stations around the world. So we've got our documentary that shows a few shorts, but also introduces different people from the indie film industry, some who are just starting, some who have been around a while, some who are actors, models, filmmakers. What are your hopes, dreams, fears, that sort of thing. So, yeah, but I suppose the main thing is just finish off Toxic Alien Zombie Babes from Outer Space. In 3 weeks' time, go back to filming again, and we're finishing off a short film called Game of Groans, which I probably shouldn't talk about that, but it's very much one of those schlocky horror films like people have gotten used to with my shorts, with all of the bad humor. It's got a girl gang that attacks a whole bunch of nerdy gamers. And then after that, it might be the first time to stop and think since the pandemic, what do I actually want to do? It's been go, 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 making so many films, working towards an old plan. And the world changed in the last 5 years. We're just talking about the pandemic, but 5 years ago, like what Vixey was saying with bandwidths, some of the stuff we're able to do now with sending stuff was much more difficult 5 years ago. It was like, hey, do you want to be uploading this for 3 days? Now it's you can upload it in 12 hours. Get what I mean? We can get footage, take footage out. So it's like, where's the world at now? I mean, does anybody even watch television? I've been doing stuff for TV. Goes out on TV. I don't own one. I've got to work out where's it all happening? Where's it at? I mean, 5 years ago, we were still doing photo shoots and putting them in magazines. Does anyone pick up a magazine? Everyone was discussing today returning to the theatre, and some of us said, well, I'm not going to the theatre much, and we're all theatre addicts. I don't know where the world's at. So as soon as I finish this last one, it's the last couple that were already in plan according to a 5-year plan that I put together years ago. And it's like, will somebody tell me what's happening in the world, where we are, what we're doing, so I can make new plans?
I think your new plans ought to be to put In Your Shorts as a double feature with Sugar and have it play at one of those theaters that Paul Rubens might attend, and then he leaves with the police escort, if you know what I'm saying.
No.
Oh, there you go. How about yourself, Vixey? Are you working on all these things with David?
Well, I am working with Toxic Alien Zombie Babes. I too have a few more a few scenes that we need to pick up that are not quite there yet. And well, I mean, speaking of documentaries, I have been doing some research and development on one that is actually about how World of Warcraft may have saved us from all being killed by COVID.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. When they put a virus in World of Warcraft, saw how it spread, and then it ended up becoming the model used for our pandemic.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I'm currently working on that, but it's in its developmental stages at the moment. We've just been starting with the basic research and development for it.
Well, hang on, they're going to throw you off the documentary because you're a blood elf, aren't you?
Well,
they don't want blood elves on this. No, it's orcs only for this. They can't have you on it. Even if it's your idea and your equipment, no.
I'm still playing like Big Doug and Tauren.
I am a Tauren.
Make sure you get clips. Make sure you get clips from the South Park episode "Make Love Not Warcraft," because they worked with the people from Blizzard, and they actually, while they were recording the game footage, they actually had what happens in the episode. They actually had that happen for real, where like someone jumped in on the event and was wrecking everything, and they had like DEFCON 5, they had like codes that they had to input to get him out and that sort of stuff. So I mean, it's serious business, and that would actually go right in hand. That would go hand in hand with what you're talking about.
That's great ideas. Well, I mean, one of the major parts that I'm building that I think is supposedly unique is I'm going to be coordinating with other streamers to have actual gameplay in the documentary. So we're going to have like, it's a participatory documentary. So people are going to be able to participate on a live server, streaming live. And then there'll be another component of it edited together with the experts' input.
Interesting. How about Chris? I'm sorry if I forget Chris here. Chris.
No worries, huh?
Yeah. What do you have anything in the plans, in the works?
Yeah, I've got a few things coming up with Sam. So working on that found footage film that we're doing. Next weekend?
Next weekend.
Yep, next weekend. And then for the rest of the year, it kind of goes a little bit quiet. And then in the new year, there's going to be some stuff coming out.
Very cool. And does Patch have anything going on?
Patch has got lots going on. Yeah.
Ray, you got anything going on? Or did you want to just moan about not going outside? Hey, I'm not shut up. I apologize, man.
So In the Dark, it's going to be coming out next year.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully around spring, we'll have more confirmation beginning of next year, and obviously we'll post it around so people know.
Cool. And where can people follow?
Australia, it's autumn.
What was that? Sorry.
In Australia, his spring is our autumn.
All around the world.
Oh, hang on. You Americans call it fall.
We use both autumn and fall, I believe.
Good. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a language problem here.
Because
Americans use this word arse a lot. They put it into sentences. And somebody was talking about fat ass rain. And I'm thinking, do raindrops have asses? And some of them are bigger than others. And it was just getting me really confused. So
yeah, I would recommend don't Google fat ass rain, because I can imagine the Google images on that.
Yeah, you get to my website. You get to my website.
It's exactly, that's how I met Mike. So,
but language wise, we all did communicate quite well today.
Yeah. Definitely. So, and one last thing, how do people follow Trash Arts or wherever In the Dark? So how can they follow that to see exactly when it's going to be coming out?
Go to Trash Arts UK on Facebook, on Twitter is Trash Arts Film, and then YouTube is Trash Arts Productions, and you can keep in touch with all the things we're going. And of course, go on Darkside Releasing's website, because they'll obviously be updating with the new releases they have coming in the future too.
Very good. All right. Well, this has been very fun. Glad to talk with all of you.
Yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you, Neal.
Thanks,
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam, for having us in your documentary. It's a wonderful insight. As they say, when you really know someone, if you know their hopes, dreams, and fears, and I think you've covered those in your documentary. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone being involved. Honestly, it's not there without everyone being involved. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. And good night, Patch.
Good night. Good night.
That's not Patch. That's another one.
Yeah, this is a different
All right.
Great one.
I'm going to hang up.